Hey, welcome back to the Ready State. I want to talk about something I call rotation intolerance. So when we sometimes on the internet hear people say things like, hey, I'm moving with my feet straighter, getting better function out of my hips, but I get a little tightness in the outside of my knee. What I think of is, hey, what's going on there? Well, let's appreciate the anatomy first. And in this session, I'll show you some ways to be programming in some rotation. Typically, when we look at the movement history and sort of the movement hygiene of a person with this kind of problem, we see very little rotation programmed into their training. And when I rotation, I'm talking about being able to manage the rotation force of the upper body through the foot. I'm not necessarily talking about, can I throw a ball at a wall and I'm training rotation through the trunk. We have to appreciate that we are designed to resist rotational forces with every step and in standing even, right? If we look at the leg of the human being, we have a chirality built into us that the system is designed when I stand and bring my hip through with my feet straight, there's a passive torsion system built in. That's why when you lay down at the beach, your legs fall out. In fact, what you'll see oftentimes is that when we stand straight, I have this natural mechanism in the leg that makes the leg more stable with the foot straight and externally rotating. The leg becomes mechanically more stable when there's that passive rotation, and it's a mechanical rotation. We have a lot of structures that get us there. But the leg is also set up to be able to do a lot of things. So as I add this rotation force, you can see suddenly my patella isn't running straight anymore. Now it's running straight. I've pinned my foot and I can still access a ton of torsion. The lower leg has a lot more play externally to when the open chain, this lower limb can rotate out a little bit. And thank goodness it does that. That gives me a lot of options. It means I can turn my foot out and create a lot of rotation through the knee. You can still see this is a ton of rotation. This torsion is a function of me going around a problem, and I'm using this twisting, this open position of the knee to solve a movement problem. Keeps me moving, keeps me hunting mammoths, keeps me in the game to chase for mates. That's really great. Less stable, less functional, less most output, less able to handle movement options, right? That's just really what the goal is. So if you've been this person for a long time, turns out you may be missing some of this rotation. And you may not be able to actually come back. And what's ends up happening is that you're feeling those tissues come at the limits. I mean, this is a pretty good example of how much rotation you can put into your knee here and still, right, contract your quads. My leg is twisting apart. In this direction, it doesn't want to twist. I end up sort of at the limits of the tissues here. Your shoulder is the same thing. I'm limited in this position. Whoop, I can go a long way in this position, right? We don't argue about, hey, I try to get into a stable pressing position. I'm like, oh, it must be that you need to flare your elbows when you bench or press. That doesn't happen. But it happens in the lower body, and we have this conversation all the time. So let me show you a couple ways to sneak in some of this rotation into your warm-ups, into play. Now, one of the things that we do during our shoulder spin-up is that we try to tap into some of this rotation by blocking the leg during our shoulder spinning and trying to post. We're appreciating that rotation happens and starts at the foot and rotates through the whole system. If I don't have the ability to rotate through the leg at the hip, man, I'm going to be blocked and have to make up for that rotation other places. This is a terrible golf swing because there's nothing happening at the hip and it's all happening upstream. I have to integrate and be able to see this as a connected whole. So one of the things that we do is we love to pivot side to side to push that out, but the rotation that happens during some of our easy spins is just prepping the foot to block and to create this rotation, which is one of the ways that we can sneak in, making sure that I have this rotational tolerance into the system as a matter of fact. But if I'm always squatting like this and just going up and down, I may not be exposing my joints to the rotation. And we should see this rotation of the knee no different than rotation anywhere else in the body. Rotation is how our bodies create stability in motion. That is the name of the game. So one of the ways then that you can get more rotation in comes through jump roping. So I have a couple options here. If you have a jump rope at home, you can just take this jump rope and spin it side to side. And what I want you to begin to do is unweight one leg at a time. David Weck talks a ton about just programming in some base rotation with some rope swings. It's not an accident that our boxers were putting this in. We all thought it was shoulders and cardio, but it turns out a little bit of rotation side to side is an easy way of making sure that I'm moving and programming in. And as I move from side to side, I'm actually externally rotating to move back and externally rotating to move back. But in these little tiny oscillations, the same way we might be breathing to get in and normalize and desensitize flexion and extension in the spine, right? Motion is the game. I've got a old crappy dead strap here. I tied a bunch of knots in it, gives me a little bit more load. And suddenly I can see that there's an easy way of putting in some of this rotation tolerance into the knees. And what you're seeing is, if you're experiencing pain doing a squat or a single leg squat where you have to create rotation, and you're getting a little stiffness here, yeah, it may be your hamstrings, it may be what's going on here in the calf, but we know that there's probably a dearth of this rotation in your programming. So one of the ways, get a little bit of motion, play around during your spin-ups, and appreciate that this rotation is one of the reasons that we're obsessed with throwing balls in the gym, we're obsessed with throwing medicine balls. We've got to be looking at these rotational planes, not because they're keys for the spine, but they're parts of the entire chain. See you on the next part.